There's this study. People who went through trauma as kids are way more likely to end up in toxic relationships. Not because they like chaos, but because this feels familiar. And that's the scary part. Trauma doesn't always look like a breakdown. Sometimes it's just choosing the job that burns you out, the friend who drains you, the partner who triggers you. This video isn't about your past. It's about how it's still quietly deciding your future. When calm feels like a threat. You ever look at a completely normal situation and just feel like something's off? Like everything's calm, everyone's being nice, and your brain goes, "This is a setup." Yeah, same. It's wild how your brain can mistrust peace just because you got used to chaos. You're not paranoid. You're not dramatic. You're just trained, quietly, over years, to expect danger where there isn't any. And the worst part? It doesn't scream at you. It whispers. Tiny gut feelings. Micro decisions. That weird tension in your chest when something feels too good to be true. So now you're avoiding jobs that are too flexible because you won't be productive. You're choosing friends who need fixing because you feel useful. You're pushing away love that feels safe because it doesn't trigger the adrenaline you once called connection. That's trauma talking, not the crying on the floor kind. The functional, quiet, professionally dressed version. The one that knows how to blend in, especially in your decision making. And unless you name it, it keeps steering the wheel. Gently, repeatedly, until your life looks exactly like the chaos you say you want to escape. The trauma GPS. Always recalculating. Always wrong. You know that moment when you're in a new city and your GPS suddenly tells you to take a weird left turn into what looks like a dead end? But you trust it anyway because it's the GPS. That's what trauma does. It builds a GPS in your brain using old, messy data, and then it navigates your entire adult life with it, even when it makes no sense anymore. You think you're being logical. I just don't like those kinds of people. That type of job doesn't work for me. But what if that's not logic? It's avoidance. What if your brain is just trying to dodge a feeling it didn't know how to process back then, and now it's labeling random streets as unsafe? So you end up back at the same job dynamic, the same fight with a different partner, the same guilt after saying no. It's not bad luck. It's just your trauma GPS saying recalculating and taking you right back to what it knows. And here's the wild part. It's not even trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. But in doing that, it keeps you trapped. Safe, maybe, but small. What would happen if just once you ignored that left turn? What if that gut feeling isn't truth? It's just habit. Comfort isn't always safe. It's just familiar. Sometimes the worst choices don't feel dangerous. They feel like home. That's what makes them so tricky. You're not walking into a burning building. You're walking into something that looks weirdly cozy. Like, yeah, this is stressful, but at least I know how this story goes. And that's the trap. When you grow up learning that love means inconsistency or that being needed equals being valuable, your brain doesn't crave peace. It craves patterns, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones, because at least those patterns feel known. So when you're offered something actually healthy, a calm conversation, a job that respects your time, a person who doesn't chase or disappear, it feels wrong, not because it is, but because it's unfamiliar. That's the paradox. The good thing feels fake, the bad thing feels real, and now you're left choosing chaos because your body confuses it with connection. This isn't self-sabotage, it's self-protection with outdated instructions. It's your nervous system saying, let's stick to the script even if the ending sucks. But here's a thought. What if your discomfort is a sign you're finally somewhere new? Not all. Red flags are loud. It's easy to think trauma only shows up in big, dramatic moments. Panic attacks, screaming fights, breakdowns. But honestly, the more dangerous stuff is quiet. It's in the moments where you talk yourself out of something good because it felt too easy. Like you finally get offered a job that pays well and doesn't suck the life out of you. And suddenly your brain goes, you didn't earn this. Or you're dating someone who actually listens and respects your space. And your first thought is, why aren't they texting me like a maniac? Do they even care? That's not intuition. That's programming. Somewhere along the way, you learned that love is intensity. That value comes from overworking. That struggle is part of the deal. And now, anything that doesn't make you sweat feels fake. Or worse, boring. But here's the twist. Boring isn't bad. Boring can be safe, consistent, healing. And sometimes healing looks like saying yes to the thing that doesn't raise your cortisol. So maybe the next time you feel that itch, the one that tells you to pick the harder, messier, more dramatic option, just pause. Not forever. Just long enough to ask, is this actually what I want? Or just what I recognize? Micro-sabotage. Chaos in a routine disguise. Let's talk about the tiny decisions, the ones that seem harmless, even logical, like choosing the more demanding job because you say you like a challenge, or dating someone a little complicated because you don't want anything too easy. Harmless, right? But zoom out. Look at the pattern. These aren't just quirks. They're breadcrumbs. Because underneath those choices, there's a belief. That discomfort means you're doing something right, that if it hurts a little, it must be working. And let's be real. Some of us are Olympic-level self-saboteurs. You'll turn down rest because you feel lazy. Say yes to helping someone at 11 p.m. because you don't want to disappoint them. Stay in that draining group chat just so no one thinks you're rude. And here's the kicker. None of this feels like sabotage. It feels like being a good person. But what if being good is costing you peace? What if that sense of I should do this is actually your trauma trying to keep you in line? Next time you catch yourself about to say yes to something that makes your stomach twist, try this. Ask, if I wasn't afraid of being judged, would I still do it? That one question has stopped me from walking into so many bad decisions dressed as opportunities. Healing feels wrong before it feels right. The hardest part about getting better? It feels fake. You expect healing to be peaceful, glowing, maybe even a little inspiring. But the truth? At first it feels like losing your personality. You start setting boundaries and suddenly feel guilty. You say no and wonder if you're selfish. You walk away from drama and miss the adrenaline. And your brain, bless its anxious little heart, starts panicking. Wait, are we safe? Shouldn't someone be mad at us right now? Why is it so quiet in here? That's the paradox. The life you're building now doesn't match the survival patterns you learned back then. So it feels wrong, even though it's finally right. It's kind of like walking off a moving treadmill. You know you've stopped, but your body's still bracing for impact. That's why healing isn't a straight line. It's a full-on identity crisis. Because if you're not the person who fixes everyone, or keeps the peace, or handles everything alone, then who even are you? And the answer is someone free. But freedom is quiet. It doesn't demand. It doesn't chase. So yeah, at first it might feel boring, fake, office. But maybe that's just what peace feels like when you've never had it. When your gut is just old fear in a hoodie. Everyone loves to say, trust your gut. But what if your gut was trained in a war zone? What if your instincts weren't built for truth, but for survival? Here's the thing. Your gut isn't a divine compass. It's a pattern detector. And if those patterns were built in chaos, then guess what your gut thinks is safe? Yep, chaos. That's why sometimes you walk into a job interview and everything seems great, but you feel weirdly uncomfortable. Not because something's wrong, but because nothing's wrong. And your nervous system is like, nah, something's off. Where's the tension? Where's the disrespect? Where's the panic we trained for? It's not intuition, it's programming, and it's really convincing, and that because it feels so real. But here's where it gets interesting. Your body's first signal isn't always the full story. Sometimes you need to pause and ask, is this fear or just unfamiliarity? The more you heal, the less your gut screams. And the more you can tell the difference between danger and discomfort. Because not everything uncomfortable is unsafe, and not everything familiar is good. So yeah, listen to your gut, but also double check who trained it. The 2-second pause that changes everything. Not every breakthrough needs to be dramatic. Sometimes healing starts with something so small it feels dumb, like this. Right before making a decision, replying to a text, saying yes to a plan, signing something, opening your mouth to people please, stop just for 2 seconds and ask, who's making this decision? The me now or the me that had to survive back then? That's it. 2 seconds. You don't need to overthink. You don't need to rewrite your whole story. You just need a micro gap. Enough time to interrupt the default setting, because most trauma-driven decisions are fast, automatic, reactive. You say yes before checking in with your body. You laugh off the disrespect before your brain catches up. You stay quiet, even when something in you knows better. But when you pause, even for a breath, you create space. And in that space, there's choice. There's awareness. There's power. It's not about never messing up. It's about messing up slower. So you can notice the pattern while it's still forming. Not after you've already built your life around it. It sounds small, but that pause, it's where your new story starts. You're not indecisive. You're over-adapting. Indecision gets a bad rap. People act like if you hesitate, you're weak, unfocused, unmotivated. But maybe indecision isn't about laziness. Maybe it's about hyper-awareness. When you've lived through situations where the wrong choice had real consequences, yelling, rejection, shame, your brain starts calculating every possible outcome, fast, constantly, exhaustingly. So now even simple things feel heavy. What to wear, who to text back, whether to speak up in a meeting. Because every option carries an invisible history of what used to happen. That's not indecision. That's over-adaptation. It's your brain trying to preempt pain by overthinking safety. And guess what? That kind of overthinking isn't a flaw. It's a survival skill. One you don't need anymore, but your nervous system never got the memo. Here's the reframe. You're not broken. You're just tired from rehearsing 10 versions of every scenario before you even move. And maybe what you need isn't clarity. It's permission. Permission to choose, even if it's imperfect. Even if it doesn't make everyone comfortable. Even if it's just what you want right now. Because that's how confidence is built. Not by always knowing, but by acting and learning that you'll be okay, even if it doesn't go perfectly. The real you wasn't built in panic. Here's a weird thought. What if most of what you think is your personality is actually just your trauma's greatest hits? Like maybe you're not naturally a people pleaser. You just learned early on that being likable kept you safe. Maybe you're not actually chill. You just got really good at never showing when something hurt. Maybe you're not indecisive or cold or intense. Maybe you're just wired to respond to pressure in ways that made sense at the time. But now, that time is over. You're allowed to want things without earning them in pain. You're allowed to be direct without apologizing. You're allowed to be soft, safe, seen. The real you isn't the version that survived. It's the one that finally gets to choose. Healing is boring until it isn't. So maybe the next time you say, I don't know why I keep doing this, the answer isn't because I'm dumb or because I'm broken. Maybe it's just this. Your trauma learned how to decide for you, and you've been trusting it out of habit. But the good news, you're not stuck. You're just familiar with stuck. And once you realize that, every moment becomes a chance to choose something else. It'll feel weird, fake, even boring at first. But then it starts to feel like peace. And that's the part no one talks about. Peace is quiet, which means you won't hear it coming, but you'll feel it when it lands. If this made your brain go, ouch but true, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. What's one small decision you've been making on autopilot that maybe doesn't serve you anymore?